Rawr.
When did we all get this dumb?
Almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear warfare. I don't see any bodies, so it doesn't count.
I'm angry about tax.
I'm the chef. I want to hear one thing. Yes, chef.
Come on, man. Use your brain.
The Why I'm Angry podcast starts now.
Well, if you're hearing this podcast, you're not live. We're recording this right now with Maugs here, and we're getting doing something. We're probably out of the office or whatever, but this still is a great podcast. We're going to talk today about the the electoral system that we consider the two-party system. It obviously we've kind of gotten into it over the years after many parties have come and gone. Two parties have emerged as the large party, and so we want to talk about whether we can continue to survive as a country with just two parties, or whether we need that third or fourth voice. Those that multiple of voices to be able to decide from, to lead our country. Remember, follow, like, and share us. This is our shameless plug. We're only here because of followers and people who consider this a value. So get on our website, subscribe right now. If you put in Angry Patriot in the product code, you get 75% off. It's $1.25 a month for ad-free podcasting, and we'll send out a newsletter every month or so. And then if you want to really help us out, for $2.50, you get the whole shebang. You get the back door. You get all of the articles that we're looking at, all of the news that we look over, and all of that. So, get in there, help us out. Obviously, help doesn't always have to come monetarily. If you get on your social medias and share us, we are the Why I'm Angry podcast on all your social medias except for X. For some reason, we're the Why I'm Angry Pod C, mainly because they didn't have it long enough to get to podcast. So get on, share us, like us, follow us, and if you give a 1 or 5-star review, we will put you in a raffle for a t-shirt. Get in on that, and maybe get a free t-shirt. So I got Maugs here in the studio with me. We're going to talk a little bit about the two-party system. I had him out researching. He's been looking. We've been trying to connect for a couple weeks here to get this recorded. And Maugs, I guess start us out with what the two-party system is, what it kind of means, and give us some of your thoughts a little bit.
Sure. Well, it's interesting that you raise this as a topic, because it's kind of a fun topic that people feel kind of strongly about one way or the other. But to go way back, you and I talked a little bit about this before some time ago, is George Washington was not a fan of the two-party system, or really
Definitely
any
not.
party system.
Right.
And so not that not that that's what we have to do today or not, but he did have a lot of insight. And if you've never read his, those of your listeners, if you've never read George Washington's farewell address that he gave to the nation in 1796, I would urge your listeners to read that. It's quite telling, and it goes over a lot of the things that we face today in American politics, not only the two-party system, but the strength of morality and religion, the importance of that in our country, the importance of individuals who are well educated and informed, people who were foresighted and had a vision. And when you start to read through that, you kind of find yourself shaking your head and saying, gee, I wish he would say that again today, and if anybody would listen to him.
Where
But
did we lose a president like that?
Yeah, I could. You're right. I'd vote for him again. Reading this, he's got a balance. He's not really um, what we would call partisan today. I mean, he had his country at heart rather than his
Right.
politics
Right.
pocket, and that's what really comes through in his farewell address. Is he's sharing his love for his country, but also sharing his concerns and his worries about its future. And he says in his farewell address, I've got it here, I'll read just a brief excerpt from it, but about the two party system, he's warning the country that a two party system might lead us to more and more fraction in our interactions with one another. And he says, in contemplating the causes which may disturb our union, it occurs as matter of serious concern that any ground should have been furnished for characterizing parties by geographical distribution. So he's saying it's best not to divide in terms of parties of the North, parties of the South, parties of the West. He
Right.
goes on to say, and the reason for this, he says, is one of the expedients of party to acquire influence within particular districts is to misrepresent the opinions and aims of the other districts. We see little backbiting now between parties, but through and the heartburnings which spring from these misrepresentations. They tend to render alien to each other and who ought to be bound together by fraternal affection. So uh, I just wanted to share that a little bit. I know you knew that, but I think with your viewers, sometimes it's worthwhile looking back on the wisdom of the past and seeing what we can learn from their experiences and their insight.
Right.
But in a more contemporary way, uh, people aren't really too enthusiastic about the two party system today either. And there's more and more I have people say, gee, if there was a third party, I'd vote for him. I had a third party, I'd vote for him. So that there is this third party now, this no names, I guess it's called, or no labels. And interestingly enough, that has gained a little bit of traction, not a lot, but a little bit of traction because they're trying to offer a third, at least, alternative for those of us United States, and to support the fact that there is a interest in that. They cited a couple of studies I'll share with you real quickly. One is that um, over half of the people, they did a study of 1,250 adults, and of those, uh, more than half said they were dissatisfied with the two party system. And then only 1 in 4 said that they were satisfied with it. So there is some, discontent about that. And I think that at least raises a possibility of if we had something, whether there would be some support to it, although it would require the right person. So have you ever heard of this no label system there, Aaron? Know much about it?
No, I actually haven't heard anything about them. I mean, I
They
know that
don't.
they're
Yeah,
like
they don't
I
have. Yeah, they don't have a candidate yet. They just had a meeting. I guess they've been kind of growing in emphasis in strength a little bit over the years. They kind of were trying to get Joe Manchin to join their cause, and but he decided not to do that. But um, they uh, they held a convention not too long ago, and they're trying to get on the ballot. I don't know if they'll ever fly at all, but I think they're trying to springboard some enthusiasm from the fact that there's a lot of people who would like an alternative to sometimes the two party system.
yeah.
So
So
go ahead.
so the problem the one thing I've seen with the three, having a third party or not or whatever, is that the electoral system right now is set up for a majority win. So if nobody gets to 50% or nobody gets to 100 and some thousand votes or super votes, or
Right.
or these Hillary Clinton votes or whatever,
Yeah.
then they don't get like there. Then there's like then Congress decides. So it's not just the person who wins gets to be president. It you have to get to so many electoral votes.
Yeah,
So
but that's a real clinker in things because the way we're set up, um, if I understand this right, I think the same number of that's based on population, but the electoral votes right now are like 270. I believe that you have to get to be
right,
president. Other countries, though, have a little different system about that, and say that a lot of countries in Europe they will vote by the popular vote. But because of that, they have a lot of different political parties. So they may have, I mean, some of these countries have, I don't know, 20 different political parties. Some of them are the major political parties, but some of them are minors. But when you have a lot of small political parties, maybe they only get one or two candidates or representatives because of the small slice of the popular vote they get. But when you get say 20 small parties that takes away the vote from the two major parties, then they get a little bit of negotiating power. So then the major
right,
parties to get to 51 has to include them in some type of unification or a party unity. So it's interesting. Their system, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, does anything with electoral votes. It's basically on popular vote.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Most of them, like if you, I mean, it was sad to say, but I think it was Argentina just had an election, and they elected a, well, what they call a libertarian candidate, or they call it. They said, the if you watch MSNBC or whatever, he's just like Trump. Well, Trump isn't anywhere close to a libertarian, but
Yeah.
um, but you know they elected a libertarian candidate, and there was like you said 4 or 5 people voting, or 4 or 5 people in the electoral group that they were voting for, and so they basically they had they it was the person who had the most votes won. It wasn't
Yeah.
like you didn't have to get to you didn't have to unite the whole country together. It was just whoever had the most following, they won, and then you build your government based off of that. And that was the one thing I kind of read through quickly when I was looking at even the UK. They have two main parties, and those two parties have built the government for the last since the World War II. And they basically when whoever gets elected, that's how they then build the government. That's how they decide who's in charge. From there isn't there isn't as much of election for states and stuff like that. It's more, this person is going to be in charge of this area, this person, because that area is more that way, they follow that type thing. And they build like it's called the House of Lords.
Yeah.
They're not elected at all, so they don't have like a constituency to like go back
Yeah.
to, where the House of Commons is. Um, from my from what I could read of it, it seems like those guys are elected for the most part.
Yeah.
And then it's based on, the House of Lords is based on that, based on the fact that whoever's the ruling party has the majority.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that from what I understand, the House of Lords is based on inheritance or the aristocracy,
Right.
and then the House of Commons is like our House of Representatives that are elected to the Parliament there.
Right.
And
Yeah, I read that
and
they have.
I guess that's worked pretty well for them. I mean, I guess they get along pretty well with that. But I
I
think
mean,
they're
other than you've seen full-on fistfights in their House of
yeah, yeah,
Commons,
that's true.
but
That's true. There is a little ire raised, I'm sure there. But I was interesting for me as I've looked at this whole issue about how to choose representatives that go to the government, because honest, honestly, I thought that was probably a pretty good thing. But on the other hand, what can happen is, because you're uh, opening up the say the House of Representatives or the representation to any group, then any group can join. So if you have a political party that's fascist, if you have a Nazi political party, if you have a political party that's really against the stabilization of government, they can still have representatives there, because all political parties have to be representative. So before
Right.
long, you can have kind of a block of resistance that prevents effective governance. Then, if you get too many of these parties that are kind of anti-establishment parties,
Right.
so there is that downside too, I guess.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I read an article from uh, Shiva G College, and it was an interesting article, and more than like it had some great sightings or whatever, but it brought up the pros and cons, and the two party system. It says the two party system is a in politics creates a structure where the electoral gives a significant majority of votes to two main parties. It doesn't mean that there can't be other parties. It just means that those two parties are going to get an advantage based on their political power, based on the fact that they have the most of the kind of advertising rights. You know,
Right.
they get the news articles about them and
Yeah.
things of that nature. And then
Right.
because they have that, they become more powerful because they have the money. The money
Yeah.
comes into them, and that's honestly, I thought when Trump walked out, when Trump was not elected the second time, um, I thought he was going to step out and create another political party,
Yeah.
and
I think.
somebody like him,
Yeah.
I feel like has the clout, has everything they need to start a party,
Yeah. Yeah.
has the
Right.
money, has the following, has the
Yeah.
fame, and because it's like Theodore Roosevelt. He walked out of the what was it, the Whigs,
Yeah.
and created the Bull Moose Party, and he had the following, and I think he had some money, but he wasn't. I don't think he was quite Trump rich.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I don't think he had the following, as in like just that die hard gotta, you know. But he built up about 20%. But in that, he in the system that we have right now, no matter how much he built out, he would have had to take over one of the other controlling parties,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
at this point you have to have what is it, 100 and some 140 electoral votes, or some 130, say, whatever's half,
Yeah.
and to get to become president or whatever. It's not it's not a simple majority. You know, it's not a simple we have the most votes, we win, or we got the most electoral votes, we win type thing. You have to have a certain number, or they send it to Congress to decide. And
Yeah.
Congress is never going to decide the third party unless the third party is the majority in Congress.
Yeah.
And really,
Yeah.
I think what if you wanted to create, we've seen, like you said, you got the no labels who seem like they can't get anyone to label themselves with the no labels.
Yeah.
You've got the Green Party, which you've seen, different people come through. Ralph
Libertarian.
Nader
Yeah.
and Rand Paul, his dad, Ron
Yeah.
Paul, has been in it, and some different people like that. And you've seen,
Yeah.
some independents like Ross Perot back in the
Right.
'90s, have come through and done very well, but none of them had all of the criteria to build a party around themselves. And
Yeah.
so I think that's where you just as a third party, as a fourth party, the government is going to have to open it up, and it's kind of like term limits. You
Yeah,
know, no, everyone says, "Oh yeah, term limits are a great idea," until you're getting termed out because of the term limits.
yeah, yeah.
It's like
But
having an age limit or having a, you know,
I think you hit on a really important point, and that is that people don't want to vote for a third party if you don't think you're going to win, because
that's
it's
it.
like throwing away your vote. So
Right,
if there ever is a third party, it has to be a very strong and convincing third party that has a candidate or a block of candidates that are have a major reputation already, plenty of money behind them, and has some way of conveying their policy and their uh, platforms to a large number of people easily. So there's a lot of uphill to a third party uh, that I think right now the best we can imagine would be there'd be a third party that would take away a certain number of electoral votes. But then you figure if the two major parties don't get the majority, then what kind of backroom negotiations are going to happen to between the third
right,
party
right.
and one of the other two major parties? There's going to be a lot of negotiations to find some kind of a coalition if, say, the third party takes away 10% or 15% of the electoral votes. Um, then things could get real interesting in a hurry. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, definitely. I mean, and you hit on it here that there has only been 30 senators since the Civil War. 30 senators, 112 representatives for the House, 28 governors who were not affiliated with a major party. That's it.
okay.
That's all that's
Yeah.
ever been elected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there were 144 libertarians holding office at the local level at one point, 139 Green Party members, and 26 Constitution Party officials.
Okay.
Um, but that's the majority. That's how many in almost in a little over 250 years or so. 200. Well, it's
Yeah.
about 270 years now, 60 years now since the Civil War. We've been able to get together maybe about 600 elected officials that were,
Mhm.
well, not even that is looking at it. It's, yeah, about 300, 350 elected officials over all the years we've been electing people to other parties.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that there's just a lot of difficulties in making a third party a viable dominant party right now.
Right, right,
But you have to ask. I mean, there is a legitimate uh, desire amongst our citizenry that we do something different. Now,
right,
I don't understand. I guess what I don't understand some is why in that perspective is how to um, have the influence in the majority parties to get the majority parties less radical, where there can't be some movement towards the middle for people. I think that's what people want. Is say I see more and more people say, "Well, I'm an independent." Well, I think that's what they're saying. If I'm not putting words in their mouth, is I don't want to be extreme on the right or the left. I want to be if I want things to be moderate. I want things to policies to be discussed. I want there to be some common ground built for making decisions. But my frustration is how do we get our two major parties to move towards the center? I think if we could move things towards the center a bit, there wouldn't be any discussion about a third party. People wouldn't have that much support to it.
right.
But I don't know how to get them to do that, Aaron.
Yeah, the problem is there's no one else. There's no other option. You're like you said, you don't want to throw your vote away. I mean, I think we waste our time, and this is sad to say. I think we waste our time sometimes and our money looking at groups like the No Labels and running them for a president's
Yeah.
spot, where we could be running them in some of these vulnerable congressional spots,
Okay. Yeah.
and you could gain some footholds there. I mean,
Yeah.
Joe Lieberman ran for, I mean, he was a Democrat to begin with, decided his party was going away, like you said, that he did not like the way they were going, and he ran kind of a conservative but campaign, but he ran it as an independent.
Interestingly
And
enough, I don't mean to interrupt you. I want to interject this real quick. Joe Lieberman is part of the. He's a co president of this No Labels.
is he now? That's funny.
Yeah, he's in the leadership.
I
The
looked at the
co-chair, he's one
website
of the
real fast, but I
co-chairmen
hadn't.
of No Labels. So for you to mention his name was kind of cute, but I didn't mean to cut you off. But I wanted to
No,
just
no,
share that.
no, but it is interesting that somebody, but he did run on No Labels for a long time. I mean, that was his deal, and it was, and I think why he was so successful at it is because, like you said in the beginning, he put the country first.
Yeah,
Instead
yeah,
of saying I'm going to align, and that's what these parties want you to do, is they want you to align yourself with them and vote only what they vote for, and vote
okay,
only when they vote, and they vote at a certain time, and they do it as a certain way so that everybody gets their votes in, so they get reelected. So you look strong on this, and you look strong on this, but we only had this many votes, or we let or this bill died even though you voted for it.
hmm,
This bill died because they had some kind of, like you said, backroom deal on something,
yeah,
and so there's so much of that, and it's not even to be a conspiracy theorist that there's so many backroom deals. They make you vote here, that,
yeah,
but if you talk to some of these guys, that you thought for years were great people going up to these positions, when they got to a leadership position, and then they step out of it afterwards, they say, there's so much going on there that you're jockeying for this vote, you're jockeying for that vote, you give up this vote because, for the greater good on this vote. You're trying to get your name on a bill and stuff like that for your legacy, and also so that you become a legacy member, so that you have a stronger vote, stronger negotiating chip when you vote and stuff like that. And so I think what happens is that they're stuck. They get
yeah,
up to a certain point, and they're stuck, towing the party line, or the party says, "Look, we won't put any money behind you and back you anymore, and we'll put out a presser that says that you're retiring, or that or that we're no longer backing you as a member of our party, kick you out."
yeah,
And then what do you have to stand on? I mean, unless you're somebody like, I mean, Rand Paul, that has built a name for himself, or Ted Cruz, or you got your big Democrats, Pelosi, or even you know JFK Jr. Some of those guys that have built a name on, either because of their name or because of their stance on what they do. You wouldn't have you wouldn't have a stance if you're the second guy from Rhode Island. Who's that?
yeah, yeah. Well, I like your thoughts that you mentioned earlier about, say, if there was, let's just say this No Labels group got together and some things. Strategically, it does make sense to work at the grassroots level in the state, or the electing representatives or senators to the federal government, rather than trying to go after a presidential nominee to win the presidential candidacy. So
Right.
if you were to do that, if you were to use your money and influence um, to help select more moderates for the local, at the local level and at the state level and the representative level, I think people would have a lot of support for that, and that would gradually gain more and more influence in terms of the federal government once more moderates were elected to the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that, I think that's what would be that you mentioned. I think that would be a real strategic thing for them to do.
The problem is I have trouble seeing the strategery, for lack of a better word, I guess,
Yeah,
in what in what like we all come in, and like you said, for the no labels, a lot of us come in with our egos and stuff like that, and we say, well, I got this idea and we should follow this idea, and no one binds together and says, okay, you're good at this, you go and run, this part of the campaign. And we have that even at the local level, or even at the grassroots level, at in the Republican Party, some that we've seen that, we don't have that just bound together. These things are, if we're going to be in a primary, these things are off limits. These things are we can't attack each other so much
yeah,
on it. And that there's no strategic planning towards the future. And I think that's where sometimes we lose. Like, the Green Party's been around a long time. They really
yeah,
have. um the no labels, if they have, they need a strategic plan to go out, like you were just saying, from here. This isn't a plan that's going to, rapidly build and be ready to, elect a president, or even start getting, governors in place
yeah,
in the
yeah,
next 10
yeah.
years.
Right.
This is one where you start you start at a local state, and you
Yeah.
start building in a state house, and you start building that up.
Right.
And maybe you look at some weak, some Leslie Graham's, congressional seats or something
Yeah.
like that, where she
Yeah.
can't even get her own seat
Yeah.
back or anything like that. Or can't win her own primary even. And so now you've got three non-incumbent, you know, senators coming in, and you start pumping some money in that, where, with a senator, you can probably elect a senator for what, 20-30 million dollars. And it's sad to think that you have to think about how much it costs to elect a senator.
Yeah.
But in certain areas, you know 20 or 30 million dollars would be a ton of money to pump in, and you get all of the ads you need. You got somebody that can speak, and it can be, charismatic in front of people, and can be exciting, tell a story. And I think that person, could start you could start getting a couple Congress members and stuff like that here and there.
Yeah.
And just do it when you see a weak spot, a spot you can get in.
Right.
And when you start to see those spots, right now we're seeing the difference in one member. The Senate right now is
Right.
losing a member, and so he has lost like two or three members, just kind of strategically here and there. And now the majority is. I mean, you're going to get some replacements in the next couple months, but those replacements come in, how fast are they going to get up to speed? How quickly are they going to actually vote for something? And
Hmm.
so, right now you're seeing where Congress is really it's really deadlocked because of a couple votes,
Yeah. Yeah.
where
You're right. Yeah.
we had the full on, 3 or 4 vote majority. Now we're sitting at like 50%. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe an extra vote.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if
So it sounds to me like for our country, at least thinking about the United States, there needs to be more work done at the grassroots level in terms of electing representatives and senators and governors. It's a long haul. I mean, things don't happen. Rome
right,
wasn't built in a day. So but I think there needs to be some thought and reflection about how can we gradually build and utilize the support out there for more moderate candidates to represent our thoughts and our feelings. Part of the problem I've always thought is that so many of these so many candidates present themselves as kind of a one issue candidate. I'm running because
Right.
I want to save the environment, and in terms of their background or their interests in defense or health services or what education, they're running, because they're going to save the planet. And that if they could, if and I think that they do that because they think that that one issue, that hot button issue, they can use to get enough votes to be elected. But it doesn't show the kind of person we want in Congress, in a sense that that person needs to be well educated in a lot of other areas and be interested in a lot of other areas and be
Right.
able to vote responsibly for things on like in education and that. And now we seem to be, yielding so much to the single issue candidates that I'm not sure we're getting the best people in there that can represent all of our issues. Not that we're going to agree 100% with them, but at least be educated enough and savvy enough that they can represent their district or their state in a responsible way.
Well, I think that takes it back to an education level. I think that takes it back to us educating ourselves on, like you said, on the candidate itself. It's like my father-in-law, threw the pamphlets on the table and said, you know, is this who we're voting for this year? And on the local, sheriff, the city council members and stuff like that. And it's like, but on that, the problem is how do we get to what they stand for and who they're following, type
Yes,
thing, where now we just see, we see on judges, even the Republican label and the Democrat label on judges. They're not supposed to be partisan in any way, shape, or form.
you're
They
right.
should be
You're
they
right.
should be there for you as an American, as a um as as an American that is innocent till proven guilty. They should be there for you as an innocent American bystander until
You're right.
some lawyer comes in and proves that you're not, and they have to rule against you. But it shouldn't matter what your whether you're conservative or not. They should still follow the rule of law.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, it's just getting crazy, the judicial system, and that it's so politicized how one judge can make decisions on a political spiel and not in really disregard any prior precedents or prior traditions. They just can do what they want to do. But I think that that's my one of my concerns about the future is how educated people are. I'll throw that brought back to my mind a paragraph in George Washington's address about education. And I'll read it real quick so I don't want to get off on too big of a tangent here for you. But he says, George Washington says in his farewell address, promote then as an object of primary importance institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge. In proportion as the structure of a government gives force to public opinion, it is essential that public opinion should be enlightened. And I think we've come a long way from an enlightened, educated public opinion. And that's going to be
Right.
a death knell for our country if we don't change it.
Well, and what's sad is it's our fault.
Yeah. Oh,
Like, if
yeah.
you
You're
get
right.
into the education side of things, like it's we are educating our students.
Yeah.
We're not piping this in from China. We're not,
Yeah.
and if we are, we're, obviously that's the problem. But we're we are in charge of educating our kids, and I feel like with all of the technological advances, they're less educated than they were in the 80s.
Oh yeah, and the other thing is all this stuff we've been talking about in terms of the electoral college and the way the voting system is set up, government set up. Some classes I've been told in public schools don't even teach civics anymore. So they don't.
Right.
Kids are being raised not even understanding how our governmental system works. What's that going to do to our country down
Well,
the road?
and we've allowed classes to be considered civics classes that aren't actual civics
Yes,
classes that
very true.
that have an education on global effects of
Yeah,
cow
you're right.
raising or something. That's now.
No, you're right. That's very true. Yeah,
So I think you're right that we've allowed other things to kind of be part of it, and I think we took advantage of the fact that at one point parents taught your kids a lot of stuff, and parents aren't as involved because for one, it's not always their fault because you now have to work two jobs to be able to own a home or to be able to have
yeah,
enough
that's
income to live. It
uh-huh.
used to be that you could buy a home on for $16,000, and that was a lot of money at the time,
Yeah,
but it wasn't so much money that one person who was working hard couldn't afford to make that.
right. You're very right.
And we're to the point where, even two decent incomes are having troubles,
It's a
being
stretch.
able to support the
Yeah,
the
it's,
interest rates, the inflation
yeah,
rates, I've and as and not to get too far off of what our topic is even in you don't realize it, but with food and gas going up a few bucks, that few bucks is every week. That few bucks is every day.
right.
You eat every day. You
Yeah,
consume fuel almost every day, depending on if you go to work, you consume fuel every day. And all of that will continue, will raise exponentially. You don't realize it. Okay, a pack of hamburgers now $6 instead of $4, but that $6 every week, or that $2 every week is, you know, I mean, there's 52 weeks in a year, so
yeah,
$2, that's another hundred and some dollars that
yeah.
you're
It adds
paying
up.
per
You're right.
year for
Yeah,
just hamburger.
yeah,
And so now, you look at, everything else that adds $2 because you don't just walk in with a bag of just one package of hamburger every week and be like, okay, kids, we're eating for the week,
yeah,
you know? And so
yeah,
I don't think we realize the true impact of what a little bit of inflation added at it is, and the fact that, you know, that's part of it. But to
yeah.
get back to what you said about George Washington, I think we have a few things that to put in perspective there. The reason he hated parties is because he just left England. I mean, a few years removed from that, but he had just seen how England was running the ship over here. They were taxing us on everything. There was a tax on tea. There was a tax on sugar. There was a tax on different other items that came in. And then there was taxes on you owning property and taxes on being a citizen of the new country. And so they felt like they were being oppressed and taxed to death. May seem like a similar or familiar feeling if but since especially if you live in New York, where you get taxed on
Oh,
sodas and luxury
yeah,
items,
yeah.
you get an extra tax on cigarettes and tobacco products. This is we're honestly getting real close to the King George
Maybe,
tax
maybe.
area
Yeah,
here. We may be doing a better job of taxing ourselves than King George did, but That's part of though what Washington was worried about. If
Yeah.
you go back to the first Continental Congress, they didn't want to form a government. Some of them didn't want to form a government at all. They
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
wanted to form a union of states
Hmm.
where there was no federal government, and that we all kind of had a treaty together,
Yeah. Yeah. Just a
and
loose
that
federal.
our state would kind of run our state, and that state would, because they were weary of cutting off the head of King George, and so we had one tyrant, fighting us and creating hundreds of tyrants that are sitting in our backyard, being able to control us, with, at that time they didn't know about ring doorbells or,
Sure.
surveillance cameras or
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
like that, or
Right.
cell phones that would be walking around, being able to surveil you at any given minute. Um, they would they would definitely not have voted for that. Um, but so when they created the country, they were leery of anything that could gain enough power to rule in perpetuity. And I think we've gotten to the point where we now have two ruling parties that can rule for perpetuity. There
Yeah.
isn't a,
That's
there isn't a there isn't really a coming change. There isn't something that I see that is coming to change things, because we've fell asleep on it. We've shut our mouths, and just, it got easy to vote the Democrat or the Republican ticket.
mhm.
And we don't have to educate ourselves. We just believe that they have the right thoughts. Anyone that's allowed into that party is got to be in, got to have the right thoughts, and really, they know what they're doing, and they're trying to run the country the way that we believe. And I
Mhm.
don't think that that's the way it goes anymore. You've got
Mhm.
some good people in there, and you've got some people who are trying to right the ship, from what I've seen. And we'll see how that works, if that kind of comes around. But I think what's sad is when you say somebody leans too far right or too far left. I think that on the conservative side of things, that people who would have been considered middle of the road are now considered extremists.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And people who have, have kind of slid to the center are now considered your middle, right people. They're your conservative people.
Yeah.
And I think that, we've slid that far to the liberal side of things, with, accepting more taxes, and accepting, the handouts that are given to us,
Yeah.
and we, that we're we're kind of allowing things to go the way they go. And if we don't step up sometime, those people who used to be, centralists, that you would have been like, get off the fence already or something, they're going to
Yeah.
be considered your right wing extremists.
Yeah.
And your people who were who you would have been like, I'd have never voted for this person, left wing liberals, are now going to be considered your centralists and your Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I I I think a lot of this goes back to what you said before. It's from I always like, because you always like to close with your podcast about what are we going to do about it. You know what
What are we going
we
to
all
do?
have.
What did we learn? Yep.
We all should vote. We all should. It's our. It's not. We can't. We can't change the world tomorrow, but we can be educated. We can be involved. We can be participatory. And I think what I've learned today in this discussion is it sounds like it's going to be, it sounds like our two-party system is there to stay. But how we can change that for the better may lie in working harder, each one of us working harder to find good, moderate representatives and senators, and working maybe better at a grassroots levels, maybe having someone like No Labels or an independent party or libertarian party to help provide funds and promotions to get moderates into government at a level, like you mentioned, the governors, get people in power that are more moderate and really push the agenda that way from bottom up. I like that approach. And I think that's something I want to commit myself to more is trying to find that those moderate people and get behind them, talking to my friends and family. And I think if we could get more moderate people who are well educated, not a single issue person that's well versed in the different dimensions of the government, a person who really cares about the country instead of their own political future, and we all educate ourselves and we all vote. That would be a place to start, I would think. What do you think? What's your thoughts?
So just while I was sitting here, um, I was looking this is just a thought.
Uh huh.
So as we were saying that if we could build this at a grassroots, if we could build this at a at a small level. So if you just look at one congressional district, like in Ohio, you have about 780,000 residents. You think about two-thirds of those are voting age residents normally. You've got a little more, a little less here and there, but they say population-wise, about 60% of people of the population is of voting age or driving age or whatever. And with that, um, if you get about a 50 to 60% turnout, which is good, honestly, you would only have to change about 160,000 people's minds,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a ton less than trying to shoot money
It's
at
doable.
200
Yeah.
250 million people,
It's
which is how
doable.
many people are of voting age in the US.
Right.
And again, if we get 50 or 60,000 or 50 or 60% of those people, you're looking at 100 million people. So instead of 100 million people, if you take about a tenth of a percent of that and try to change those people's minds. Think if you got one congressman in there, and then you spent the money in 2 years to get the next congressman,
Sure.
and then in
Sure.
another 2 years you spend to get the next. You start to build a movement as opposed to you know let's just throw our names in the ring and
Yeah.
all over the country.
And the other thing is, people won't feel like they're throwing away their vote. It's like if you vote for uh,
Right.
No Labels and they don't really have a prayer of electing a presidential nominee. But
Right.
if you take that money and invest it in the grassroots, and people say, "Gee, this person is a good person," and you educate people why this moderate or conservative person is the one to vote for. Then people, when they vote, feel that they're really making a difference because they see it right there in their own community, that right there in their own state or their district or whatever. So
Right.
putting more emphasis on the grassroots elections, I think, maybe is one of the things that we've not done very well with. That maybe we could start by doing a lot better at that level for people.
Yeah. And it honestly it comes to with things like you're doing. Just talking to your family members, talking to friends,
Yeah,
people you meet, anybody that'll listen. Um, you know, talk to the the rabbits in the field over there, whatever. But just
Yeah.
start getting the word out that we're not just we're not just a single voice anymore.
Right.
That we've seen with different movements. I won't name any movements, but we've seen with different movements that the silent or the loud minority can get
Yeah.
things moving. And
Yeah.
so if we can become, if we can learn to be organized, then we can learn to be a loud minority, even if we
Yeah.
become the minority.
Sure.
We used to be the majority, but if we can become that, at least outspoken group, I think you would see a lot more people than you realize are upset with the system the way it is,
Yeah.
are ready to move on. But like you said, you don't want to throw away. It was like the whole John McCain vote.
Yeah.
There's no,
Right.
you knew in your heart of hearts that he was not a good option for president,
Yeah.
and you knew that he wasn't going to even win, but there
No.
was nobody else to vote for.
Yeah. No. That's why I think we need to. You, the challenge is that we all need to be more educated, and we really need to support good candidates. And
That's
hopefully,
it.
we'll in the future we need to really each one of us be supportive when we do find someone that is meets those criteria, that we support them in however way we can, whether it's
Right.
sending out feelers or talking to friends or family or whatever that might be. But
Get involved.
uh,
I mean, that's
yeah,
100%. You get
yeah,
involved and be
right,
even if you're at the polling station as a conscientious observer,
right,
somebody that's just there observing, making sure that the
sure,
polling is done right and things of that
right,
nature. You know, that we're seeing that, it's being circumvented, but at the same time they can't really um without a major push or fight, they're not. They've got to allow you to see what's going on, and
yes,
that is one lucky check and balance we still have in this country, is that
sure,
we can be there and we can be a part of the system. And
yes,
so even at least at the grassroots level, if we can get the word out, I'm going to look into this no labels group, and maybe we'll start pushing that more, or maybe we'll find somebody that's better to
yeah,
push, that is more
yeah,
organized, or maybe we can help them become more organized, at least in our little area.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Well, we got our work to do.
that's it. What we learned today, we need to be more organized, more strategical,
Yes, right,
things
you're
of
right.
that nature, that
And,
just do what you can in what you got, and
yeah,
and really it comes
right.
down to education. They didn't win this over in a night.
No,
Educating our kids in a day. It's
no,
surprising how fast a generation of kids can be educated out of where we were. But just get in and educate your kids, educate people.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
noticed that even some of the people that I've talked to over the last, that were just a couple steps behind me,
mm-hmm,
maybe 5 or 10 years behind me. They didn't know any of this. They didn't go through,
yeah,
the education system had changed
yeah,
drastically even
yeah,
after that. So,
yeah.
and
That's the sad.
and I'm sure even between us, our education system had changed
Oh
and
yeah,
things like
yeah.
that, and that's
Yes, yeah, no,
so.
yeah. So yeah, so
All right, well, this has been another
good.
great episode of the Why I'm Angry podcast.
Okay,
Get
been great
on,
to see you again, talk to you,
yeah,
and
yep,
have it
definitely,
next time we
definitely.
connect. We'll have all the world's problems solved next time.
So one of these days we'll get it all talked out. Uh, so
Good.
yep,
It was
definitely get
fun.
on, follow, like, and share us. Definitely, make sure that you get on and get our merch. Help us out any way you can. get on the whyimangry.com website and, just, follow, like, and share us. So, hit the button and nothing happened.
Remember to follow, like, and share the Why I'm Angry podcast across all social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcast. The Why I'm Angry podcast ends now.